A farmer who used a 16-ton bulldozer to destroy a riverside beauty spot has said he acted to protect local homes from flooding. John Price, a local potato and cattle farmer, dredged a section of the River Lugg near Leominster in Herefordshire and reportedly stripped a mile-long stretch of the bank of trees and bushes. The farmer, 66, was widely criticized and the Environment Agency has launched an urgent investigation into the matter. And Helen Stace, CEO of the Herefordshire Wildlife Trust, described Mr. Price's actions as a crime against the environment. However, last night Mr. Price, who lives next to the river, said he had acted to protect locals in the nearby hamlet whose homes were devastated in last year's floods. Dredging a river does reduce a flood risk, at one location, by allowing water to move downstream more quickly. This would explain John Price's actions with regard to removing trees that had already come down in the waterway itself. As he said, "I have not pushed any trees out and I haven't knocked any trees down. I have only cleared what once came down in the flood." However, the act of dredging can increase the risk of flooding elsewhere by disturbing the natural balance of the river. It can also wreak havoc with river habitats, including salmon spawning areas. Mr. Price also said he was asked to carry out the work for free as he was fixing the erosion of the riverbed and was helping solve issues caused by last year's floods. One way to protect river banks, however, is by using living, or dead, trees, roots and branches to cushion banks from the force of a river. He said he was asked to carry out the work for free as he was fixing the erosion of the riverbed and was helping to solve flooding issues. Local residents said they had asked the Environment Agency to clear the blocked river to prevent more flooding, but their appeals failed. Claiming he acted with permission, Mr. Price told the Daily Telegraph, "I'm a Herefordshire farmer and have lived at Hay Farm and was born here at home. I have never moved and have watched this river all my life and no one knows this river better than myself. I have always looked after the river. I was asked to stop the erosion because I'm the landowner, so I'm responsible for the river. It was up to the Environmental Agency to look after these rivers, but they don't do any work and haven't got any money to do the work because they spend it all on clipboards. I have not pushed any trees out and I haven't knocked any trees down. I have only cleared what once came down in the flood." He added that the flooding had been getting worse over the last 10 years and that he had the support of the village and parish council in doing the work. The Environment Agency said it was taking the matter very seriously and had launched an urgent investigation. Environmentalists, including BBC Gardeners World host Monty Don, were yesterday in shock at the complete obliteration of a site of special scientific interest, home to otter, Atlantic salmon, brook lamprey, and water crowfoot. Don, whose Longmeadow Cottage garden, the filming base for Gardeners World, lies a few miles from the stretch of the river in Herefordshire, tweeted, "It breaks my heart, but it is all too typical of the ignorance, arrogance and sheer wanton destruction of those privileged to care for our countryside." One resident whose home was flooded last year told the publication that Mr. Price took on the work because the EA refused to listen to their appeals. She said, "John has acted in the best interests of the local community." Another villager said, "During last year's storms, all the cottages near the river flooded and some are still not ready for people to go back into." The Environment Agency were asked again and again to sort the river out, but it didn't happen. "I think John just got sick and tired of waiting for another flood and just did what he had to do." Yesterday, 14 officials from agencies including the Environment Agency, the Forestry Commission, West Mercia Police and Herefordshire Council descended on the scene. Dave Throop, the Environment Agency area manager, said, "We are aware of reports of damage to the River Lugg, which due to its environmental importance is protected through Site of Special Scientific Interest status. We are treating this very seriously along with Natural England and the Forestry Commission, who have taken immediate action in an attempt to prevent any further works at the site." Helen Stace, of the Herefordshire Wildlife Trust, said, "A large stretch of one of the UK's most important rivers, the Lugg, has been devastated with dire consequences for wildlife and water quality downstream. This is a tragedy. The bankside trees are all grubbed out and burned, the river gravels have been scraped away and the beautiful meanders of the river have been straightened and reprofiled." As former leader of the English Nature Rivers team which notified the Lugg as a site of special scientific interest, "I know this river to be one of the most enchanting tree-lined reaches with immense value for wildlife. This is a crime against the environment. Swift action needs to be taken and we want to see the authorities investigate the matter swiftly." She added, "This is nothing short of a tragedy that will have dire consequences for the wildlife and water quality downstream. This is not about protecting the local area from floods. In my opinion, the work that has been done will actually have the opposite effect." And Andrew Nixon, Conservation Senior Manager of the Trust, said on its website, The actions taken on this stretch of the river will have far-reaching consequences both for this stretch of river and floodplain and further downstream. Removing all bankside vegetation and scraping out the riverbed and banks will cause a huge increase in the speed the water moves through the river and increases the flood risk downstream. With no stabilizing vegetation, any heavy rainfall and rise in river level and speed will mean massive erosion of the banks with a great amount of soil washed into the river along with agricultural pollutants such as phosphates and pesticides. This soil smothers the riverbed for miles, destroying fish spawn and invertebrates that inhabit it.